Peace. I'm making this video based on the fact that I'm halfway through a book dealing with Patrice Lumumba. And I want to show you all the book. I'm halfway through this book. And this book actually came out in 2015. So this book was actually on my bookshelf. And in some of my earlier videos, you can actually see it sitting on the middle shelf. But this book came out in 2015. And I just recently pulled it off the shelf to start reading it. Because in January, because today is February 19th, in January, it will be, I believe, 55 years. It was 55 years since his assassination. So he was assassinated in January 1961. But I never knew exactly the whole story. Only thing that I ever knew, anytime the anniversary of his assassination came up, you'll see people post information on Facebook. But I never knew the history behind it, but little snippets. I knew he was a leader of an African nation and that he was executed. But this picture on the front is one of the ones that I remember. Anytime I ever heard of Patrice Lumumba, I remember seeing this picture. I remember seeing the video of him being led out. He was handcuffed. And there's one more picture in here that I remember of him. And it's just a sad state that I just don't remember any other picture. Maybe one where he wasn't handcuffed and detained. But this is the other picture that I remember seeing over the years of him when he was taken, when he was arrested. But this book, I don't know who the authors are, whether they're good, they're thorough, they're excellent researchers, but so far I'm halfway through this book and I'm able to understand it, and it is a slow read for me because I have no idea about the cities, you know, the politics and the leaders. Everyone has names that's hard for me to pronounce. So I have to know who's who of what nation, who was leading what part of the country, political parties. And the authors, to me, did a pretty good, so far I'm halfway through. This is a map they do show of the Congo where the cities were located. So I have to read this slowly. And like, I'm just highlighting almost the whole page. I'm highlighting because this is like, I'm like a baby taking in information and pages that I'm just highlighting. Highlighting stars, important information I never knew before. But the authors did a pretty good job of breaking down the politics. And like I said, I'm only halfway through the book. Pretty good job of breaking down the politics, who's who felt what, who wanted to join with what side. They did pretty good. Like I said, I am new to this, and some of the chapters in the book were like the Congo of the Belgians, independence, the Empire Strikes Back, the Cold War comes to Africa, the government falls, Mobutu. These are some of the chapters. The Central Intelligence Agency, the return of the Belgians. I haven't gotten to those chapters yet, but they give illustrations and maps throughout the book. But so far, like I said, I am just highlighting almost whole pages because this is like brand new information to me. And I can follow along, and I actually can see how he ended up being assassinated. I mean, it's everything. You got jealousy, politics, power, greed, fear, ignorance, lack of information. Basically, when people claim that there was independence, there really wasn't. Fighting over land, and then you create division. Division through greed with promises, and people falling for that. Unity not existing, and therefore people were able to conquer. So it all led up to him being arrested and ended up being executed in January of 1961. So it's very informative, and like I said, I have to read it slowly. And the thing that I find most interesting, according to these authors, was that I guess Patrice Lumumba was, I guess, pictured as a Marxist, but they gave some examples where he didn't choose sides. If somebody from the East, Russia, was willing to help him with something, he will accept that help, the resources. If somebody from the UN or the United States want to help him, he'll accept that too. He didn't have a boundary like, oh, I will only accept from the West. I don't want to hear nothing from the East. He didn't do that. But because he was unreliable, he didn't choose a side. He was seen as a threat to people. But this book, and like I said, the authors, I don't know them. I haven't investigated who they are, but to me, they're very informative, and I can already see halfway through the book how it played out. I can just see it. It's just like a game of chess, how you start moving certain ways, and it's starting to fall into place. And this book alone, it's not a long book. Altogether, it's like almost 280 pages, but almost like 65 pages are like notes, the epilogue, the index. So they give a lot of information and resources, and of course they do maps and pictures, who's who, what's what. So, but as for me, because the information is new to me and I don't know who the people were, the regions of the Congo, the cities, the important of the different types, like what military sources are located down here, all the oil is located in this part of the country. All of this information is included in this book, and it's helping me understand how Patrice Lumumba was basically doomed from the beginning. Like his time in office like almost collapsed as soon as he was elected. Like days later, you had people rebelling, security forces rebelling. They wanted the same thing as other politicians, and another politician, broke off. You got loyalty, people just broke it. It's like within a week, stuff started popping off of him. So he was doomed from the beginning. And I'm speaking about this because the anniversary, I think it's 55 years, was just in January of last month. And today is February 19th. And in 2 days, it will be February. I said February. It's February 19th. And in 2 days, it'll be February 21st. February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X was assassinated. Also, 4 years after Patrice Lumumba. And Malcolm X actually saw a video where he actually spoke about the assassination of Patrice Lumumba back then. So if you want to see it, you can check it out. It's on YouTube. But in 2 days, it will be 51 years since Malcolm X was executed, assassinated in New York City. Who did it? People say it was just the Nation of Islam. People said it was the U.S. government. And some people said it was both of them together. It'll take people reading history and FBI files and taking points of views from people to come to your own conclusion. But in 2 days, it'll be 51 years since he was assassinated. And y'all can see my picture on my little cabinet back there. And I like that picture because he is holding, I had to look it up, what type of rifle he was holding, the M1 carbine. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I like this picture because to me it symbolizes self-defense. Self-defense, everyone has the right to self-defense. And I believe this picture was taken, might be wrong, like after his house was firebombed 1 week before he was actually assassinated. Like his right to defend himself and his family. And that's like a famous picture of him, any means necessary for self-defense. So as you can see in my bookcase, I have a couple of other books of him. I got my Malcolm X earrings on. All you haters hating it. Yeah, I love them. I actually got it from my sister when I went down to Atlanta I guess she sold them at the Malcolm X Festival down there in Atlanta. So she had a couple of pair, but these are the biggest pair. I don't know why I got the biggest pair, but I like them so much because they were unique. Yeah, I know. Hate on haters. I hate to say that, but a lot of people just don't like Malcolm X for whatever reason, because they're cowards, I guess. Or, you know, it's really like a personal beef. It's a thing of loyalty for whatever reason. Whether you love him or hate him, whether you thought he was weak or he was strong, you know, thing is that it's an ancestor that I look up to, and he inspired so many. And you know, people always go back to, you know, the autobiography of Malcolm X. I think I read it 3 times in my life. And people will argue over whether those were really his words, or if Alex Haley actually kind of altered some of his words, or if he left out some information. And actually there is another book with some extra chapters that somebody does have it. I think they were trying to auction that off. It was something I heard probably about a year ago. Like chapters that nobody ever read that wasn't included in the autobiography of Malcolm X. But that book has inspired so many people to look into their own history. It's also, you know, you see a man who was a powerful leader, but he didn't start out, his whole life wasn't that. He had a lot of bad, he's done a lot of bad things, and he ended up going to prison and all of that. Most of us probably do know the story. But it's somebody who wasn't perfect, who didn't live a righteous life for some years, you know. But he was able to raise himself up, and he did that through Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. Was able to bring discipline to him. But his parents were Garveyites. So he did have a foundation there. Both his parents were Garveyites. And he had that background. So he, you know, the Nation of Islam wasn't his introduction into being around people who show pride in being black, being African, and having, you know, have intelligence, be prideful of who you are, you know. So he had that as a child and lost it, you know, when his father was killed and his mother was taken away, and then his life unraveled from there until he ended up in prison. But he was able to raise a lot of people up in knowledge. And for me, I'm just speaking, I don't even remember the year, early 90s, when the movie Malcolm X came out. People would debate on it whether it was true, because it's based on the autobiography of Malcolm X. But you just see the transformation of him and how he ended up supposedly falling out with the nation. People will argue whether he was right or he was wrong, and so-called exposing Elijah Muhammad. People are still today, you would hear whether the other women were his wives or he actually was doing wrong. People are still debating this, and I'm like, almost 50 years later, 50 plus years later, people are still, nah, that's not true. Nah, this not true. Nah, that didn't happen. Nah, this was that. He was wrong for doing that. Nah, he was right for doing that. And I know whatever I'm going to say is going to make somebody mad, but this is where, hey, no, everybody ain't going to agree with you. But for me, I admire him because, and I'm not trying to speak disrespectful of Elijah Muhammad. I'm not doing that at all. But it's just my perspective, so you can call me ignorant, naive, ill-informed, or whatever. But for me, a student that was under a teacher, and he improved so much under a teacher, improved his life. He was raised from the gutter up. For a student to speak against a teacher, you can look at it two ways. You could say, well, what I hear, Well, he did that because he got too prideful. He got a big head about himself. He thought he was all that, and it was like an act of betrayal that he wanted to be the so-called star of the show or whatever. But I look at it from an angle that if somebody helped raise me up from the dead, and I felt that the teacher, you find out if a teacher was living wrong and you expose them, to me that takes guts. That takes a lot of courage to do that. Like, yeah, you helped raise me up from ignorance. I served under you. But for me to find out that you were doing something that you spoke out against and made sure other people enforced them type of rules in their own life, and and I find out you were violating them the whole time. That's such an act of betrayal right there. And for a student to speak out against a teacher, to me that is such courage and bravery behind that. And other people will look at it from a different angle, saying that none of it was true. You got big headed, you just want to be media hungry and all that. I don't see it that way. So I'm sure in the comments y'all gonna, let me know. But I don't know, I might not make comments available. And there are those that are watching this video right now who have no interest in listening to anything about Malcolm X. They're really not trying to learn anything. They're probably trying to just stir up stuff because it has something to do with Muslims or whatever. And I find that a lot. Somebody find out you're a Muslim, it's like they blame you for the terrorist attacks across the seas, or they think you're conspiring to do something. It's just like you're being blamed for crimes against humanity for what's going on across in another country that people suspect that you're going to do something to. So I got some people watching this video who just sitting there like, what is she going to say? What is she going to say? Like you're trying to start some stuff up. I am a Muslim. I'm not going to change that for you or anybody else. So y'all can stir up out of ignorance or whatever. But I'm speaking about, assassinations of a couple of leaders that y'all probably don't even care about, because you choose to live in ignorance. But I went in that little spiel. But in 2 days, it will be 51 years since Malcolm X was assassinated. And like I said, all these decades later, people still arguing whether he was right or wrong for speaking out against the Nation of Islam and Elijah Muhammad. Whether Elijah Muhammad actually had wives over his wives, or they were just some young girls he was dealing with. Malcolm X was disobedient for speaking to the media after President Kennedy was assassinated when he was told not to. That shows that he was flawed right there, and he was disciplined for it. It's like constant battle, and it's just like anytime I see it, I'm just like, all these years later, people still talking about it. It's like the elephant in the room that nobody can make go away. It's always going to be questions anytime it comes up, and people will sit there and try to give long explanations, their point of view. You can hate Malcolm X, you can like him, criticize him, demean him. I've heard people say, oh, he wasn't the best leader, the best speaker in the Nation of Islam back then. Anyway, I just heard some really hateful stuff, coming from people with the nation. And I guess that is just loyalty. You can't even give nobody credit, but it's just like, I guess you have to choose sides. And I'm glad I'm not in that type of position where I will have to choose a side. But even all these years later, it's still a debate. And anytime it comes out, even with Minister Farrakhan, he still is talking about Malcolm X. It's like he's in his 80s and he still has to talk about Malcolm X. It's like, and to me that's telling. It's just like, I don't know if it's like because you got young people coming up and they still listen, they're starting to listen to Minister Farrakhan, and they've got their own thoughts. So it's like, all these years later, he still has to try to explain his position on Malcolm X. You know, I remember, and the people don't want to talk about it. I remember that video he made back in the 1990s. It's on YouTube, where he called Malcolm X a traitor and how the nation deal with traitors. That's their business. It ain't nobody else's business. Those were words out of his mouth. Now, for people to say, you see a man say this, but tell somebody, oh, well, he didn't quite mean it like that. Like, he really had nothing to do with that. Come on now. We always talk about common sense. You sit there and say it like how we deal with a traitor. That's none of y'all business on the outside. But nobody's supposed to think that you didn't have something to do with that. And I saw the video he did, Minister Farrakhan did with 60 Minutes and the eldest daughter, Attila. I believe that's her name. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, got their names. I think her name is Attila. They did that interview with Mike Wallace, and she basically confronted him, saying how, you know, you basically stirred it up and you left the children out there basically, I guess, like tumbleweeds. We were just left out there. And I remember seeing a televised interview with Betty Shabazz, where somebody said, you know, repeated to her what the video I was talking about, what Minister Farrakhan said about how they deal with traitors. Is none of nobody's business how we dealt with him. And she said, yeah, she said it was basically bragging. People were bragging all throughout the nation about Malcolm X being killed. They were happy about it. She knew it was like, it was not really news to her. She was just surprised that he actually said it. Then a couple of years later, when one of their daughters got in trouble for attempting to hire a hitman to kill Minister Farrakhan, they actually had a, I don't want to say a gathering, where both of them were on stage, and they gave their, you know, how they were unified, and Minister Farrakhan spoke out about the setup of one of the daughters, you know, taking the bait of supposedly hiring a hitman. He didn't buy into it, so they kind of showed a unified front. But when Betty Shabazz came to the podium and spoke, she basically said, not quoting her words directly, but she was saying, Malcolm X is our brother, and I hope you consider him your brother. And she kept saying that. And it was like an emphasis, like, you know, we may be unified visually, but the tension, it's like, I'm like watching the video, this like decades later, and she was like, he was still a brother, and hope you feel that way, that he was your brother. So, like I said, all these years later, and I just think that if I was with somebody and something popped off when I'm in my, you know, late 20s, early 30s, and here I am in my 80s, and I still gotta say something like, I ain't had nothing to do with it. I ain't got nothing to do with it. I ain't had nothing to do with it. I'm just like, dang, people ain't putting this to rest. There's a reason why people aren't putting it to rest. So you can say it was based on lies. People believe in lies, and you still, this elephant is still in the room. It's still in the room. And I think it will always be in the room, because something ain't sitting right with people. So you'll tell people the best thing you can do is to investigate on your own. But for me, personally, I do believe members of the Nation of Islam were involved. I do. And like I said, the words of Minister Farrakhan back in the 90s, when he said how we deal with traitors, they ain't nobody else's business but ours how the nation deals with it. And he was straight, direct, and everything. He didn't fumble over his words or nothing. So what is that supposed to say to people? Look like you had a hand in it. But then just say it's the U.S. government that did it. We ain't had nothing to do with it. I mean, it's like almost like you're playing people for a fool. Yeah, I'm just looking down at this book on Patrice Lumumba, so that's what I'm doing, just flipping through. But I'm just letting my thoughts flow. But in 2 days, it'll be 51 years since he was assassinated. Every year I said I would go up and see his grave. I missed it last year. I missed getting that ticket. By the time I went to get the ticket, I'm thinking, oh, if I wait like a week and a half before, you know, the trip left, you know, the bus went up there. Guess what? The tickets weren't available anymore, and the guy never called me back. So hopefully I get a ticket this year to go up to his gravesite. And no, I don't need to go up to his gravesite. I understand all of that, but you know what? I want to take a trip to New York City. I want to take a trip up to New York City and want to see his gravesite and others. His wife, his grandson who was murdered, I believe it's probably 3 years. This will be the 3rd year in May since he was murdered down in Mexico City. And other famous people who are buried up there. I just want to go up there and just, you know, visit their gravesite. But yeah, when you speak about Malcolm X, people, I wear my earrings. You know, I have some earrings with Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X on them. Anytime people hear Malcolm X, they just think, oh, you know, radical, this and that. I had to look up when Malcolm X was actually, his image was actually put on the U.S. postage stamp. I had to say, what year was that? I had to look it up on Google. It was 1999. The United States Postal Service put his picture on a U.S. stamp. And I remember back then, I didn't even buy one of them stamps. I was thinking, like, they finally going to put him on a stamp. They actually say he's worthy to be noticed and recognized all these years later. But when he was alive and well, you know, in physical form, he wasn't worth the time of day. He was a threat. But now, all these years later, he's dead. Now we can actually put him on a postage stamp. Yeah. But yeah, it was just my thoughts of, you know, reading the book on Patrice Lumumba and see how things happen. You know, disunity, jealousy, power, how it all plays in hand, you know, in hand where people are assassinated. Who's to blame? You know, debates can go on and on and on, but in 2 days it will be 51 years since he was assassinated. Those are my thoughts. I'm trying to think if I want to say anything else. One day I'm going to have to actually do a video on Malcolm X. You know, people who know me, they'll be like, good God, Melissa always posting around his assassination date, his birth date. I'll post pictures on my Facebook page. But to me, he spoke to me. It's like when I saw that movie Malcolm X, no matter if people debate over it, me seeing the movie helped me read his book to really understand his story further. And all I kept saying is that God, he led a bad life. He was in all kinds of criminal activity. And I'm just sitting there thinking that how you in jail and somebody, some teacher, you know, was able to raise you up out of your ignorance. I'm like, if the Bible couldn't do it, how was Islam able to do it? How was Islam able to do it? All that bad stuff. You a drug addict and everything. Even up in prison, you wanted to fix. He wanted to fix. How is teachings that powerful to get you up over that? And people say, you know, that's the thing about it, you know, the nation, why it was so, or maybe it still is, I don't want to misspeak, you know, why it can raise people out of ignorance and make them more disciplined. And, you know, it's still a force to be reckoned with right now, but a lot of people feel that once Minister Farrakhan transitions passes, that the nation will collapse. That this organization will collapse. So I mean, I see that on people talking all the time when they talk about, because Minister Farrakhan is probably, I don't know if it's 82 or 83, but people want to know what's going to happen. Who would lead it after him? But yeah, Islam. Maybe I do another video on Islam, because I swear, when you're a Muslim, people who don't know nothing about the religion, they compare you to what they see on TV, what's going on across the seas, like you're a terrorist threat or whatever because you're a Muslim. Like, excuse me, don't everybody has the freedom of choice in this country to be whatever religion they want to be, whatever belief system they want to be, whatever knowledge system they choose to live by? But because you choose something outside of what a majority of the people are, that's strange, that's weird, and people want to try to hold you as accountable, thinking that you're going to commit the same atrocities that are being committed across the seas about people who claim they are Muslim. And it's like you always got to explain. No, I'm like, you want me to compare you to some Christians I know? When we compare y'all together, that would be considered an insult. But they have no problem seeing something on TV, a terrorist attack, and they expect you to explain it and defend yourself against what they're seeing on TV. And that's why media, people are so controlled by media, they don't even think about it. They believe everything those talking heads will say without even using their brains to say, you know what, they're crazy people all over this earth. You can't blame a religion. And I had to tell somebody today, somebody, greeted me, assalamu alaikum, and wa alaikum assalam. They're like, she's Muslim too? She wasn't covered up like me? Everybody knew I was, because I would wear my hair completely covered. But when this other woman greeted me, it was like, what? She's Muslim too? And I'm like, yeah. I said, guess what? You probably be around some Muslims and wouldn't even know they're Muslims, because what, they're not dressed with a scarf on their head? We look all different types. You wouldn't even know unless someone said it. So don't fall for it because someone's hair is not covered that they may be just a Christian. So that person got a surprise day. I was like, yeah, she's a Muslim too. She's been a Muslim for a couple of years. I was surprised when she let me know she was. So, but that's the thing. People expect you to answer for some lunatics across the seas. And now you got to defend yourself. You got to defend the religion. I'm like, I don't need to defend the religion. I don't need to defend the religion. The religion stands on its own. People do things that are wrong in all religions, all races, all different other differences between human beings. Don't sit there and categorize Muslims as, are we some, terror hungry people and we want to destroy the United States and all this fear because they're listening to the TV. Then they're not even using their brain because they're acting out of ignorance and fear. You go to use your daggone common sense. But people want to go if they want to go. Their stuff is all right, and anything that's different is wrong. Like I told a sister before, we all on our own journey, our own path. As the Quran says, not quoting directly, what's for you is for you, and what's for me is for me, and leave it at that. Nobody can convert me back to Christianity, and I damn sure ain't trying to convert nobody to Islam. I'm not trying to convert nobody to Islam. I don't want to talk about religion. I don't want to talk about no damn politics. Because when people try to introduce those conversations, it's going to cause division, and people feel so personal about their politics and their religion. You're going to offend people, and next thing you know, you're arguing about stuff that really doesn't matter because you ain't going to change nobody's mind, and everybody going to go back to their corner still believing what they believe. So stay off those topics and deal with people on a human level. And that's like now I'm coming to a point Now I actually see it, and I've heard it over and over again, how religion divides people. I actually understand that right now. Religion divides people, and as I stated before in another video, majority of the wars fought in this world were over religious beliefs. You don't believe as I believe. Your God is not called the same as my God. Okay. That's enough to murder somebody else. And like the stuff that's going on, Muslims, so-called Muslims, are killing other Muslims. They're raping women, killing kids, doing all kinds of barbaric things. And you'll say, well, Islam is barbaric. I'm not answering that. Because there's plenty of violence in the Bible too. So when you talk about violence in the Quran, talk about the violence that's in the Bible. People always forget, and that's one thing I like. There was a program we had 2 days ago celebrating Black History Month. And the man that spoke, he was a historian. And one thing he emphasized, he was dropping jewels like I don't know what on Black history, especially in our area. And when he was speaking about African history, it was stuff I learned. A lot of things he was saying I've learned just in the last 2-3 years of my life because of reading books, learning history. He talked about John Henry Clark. That's one of our ancestors, great ancestors, scholars that passed. He brought so much knowledge to so many people. Of course, I never saw him speak. He was never my teacher, but some of the people I listen to today, he was their teacher. He mentioned John Henry Clark. He talked about slaves having Yoruba, the religion and things that they did. He spoke about how slaves always rebelled against slavery. There were always rebellions and uprisings. And he emphasized how this is not taught in the educational system. I mean, he was hitting on so many things that I just learned. He spoke about how Hercules, the slaves, cooked a birthday cake for George Washington for his birthday. And they said they'll tell this story to kids, but they don't finish the story. And this is when he said that, I just learned about it myself a month ago. I said, Hercules cooking a cake for George Washington. They said they always tell kids this story, but the real story was he cooked the cake, celebration and all that. Of course, from what I understood, the point of view was that everybody got drunk and Hercules ended up escaping that night and they never caught him. They don't tell that story to the kids. Like, yeah, it threw a birthday party, but this man was plotting his escape, and he escaped. So he, spoke about how slaves always rebelled. And one story he told, like where I work, the bridge that's right there near where I work, they called it the Long Bridge. And he spoke how a female slave escaped out of the auction house and they were chasing after her across the Long Bridge. And people on the other side were running towards her to get her. And what she ended up doing is climbing over the rail and jumping down into the Potomac River. And she killed herself, basically. And she went down and didn't come up. So she chose death instead of being held captive. And I'm sure there are plenty of stories like that. So when this speaker was speaking, I was like, a lot of things he was saying, I learned myself in the last 2 or 3 years. So I knew who John Henry Clark was. I knew what Yoruba religion was, and some things he was talking about, slave uprisings. Just hearing about that, because like you said, in the education system, we never hear about uprisings. There was always uprisings, plantation burnings, escapes. He said we never lost our African minds. When we were captive, we were architects, mathematicians, we were artists, architects, all types of things. We weren't slaves, we were enslaved. So this speaker, he was dropping jewels, and my friend was saying, I kept nodding my head like I was in church. So it was like, Ashe, yes, yes, yes. It was like he was hitting on so many things I just learned myself, and I was like, yeah, I learned that. But I imagine that if I didn't read or know anything, I'd be like, who's John Henry Clark? Yoruba? What's Yoruba? I never heard of that before. Uprising, like, I ain't never heard about that. It can't be true, because after all these years, I never heard that there was consistent uprisings. But that comes through studying your history. And I guess he does give lectures around the area we live in, so he had a brochure for that. And when I went to get one, they were all gone. But when you learn your history, you just find out so much that you didn't know. And like I said in another video, a lot of people don't want to know the history. They want to forget it, act like it never happened. But there's a price to pay for that ignorance. And that's one thing he said at the end. He said, when you tell history, tell all of it. Not half truth, not myths, not lies. Tell the whole truth. You know, so he spoke almost an hour. And he was brilliant. I mean, I was sitting there like, I learned that in my head. I was like, I heard about that. I learned that. You talk about Hercules and George Washington, that cake. I said, I heard that a month ago. So when he said it, I already knew what it was. So, yeah, reading is important. And like all them books I got on there, I probably read half of them. But with history, you know, the stuff you learn, when you learn history, you know, it's not just absorbing information. You have to take action. And the action is to get back to the community that you live in. You got to do something with what you know, whether it's to teach other people, to help other people around you. But you just can't get information and just use it for selfish reasons. You're supposed to give back because plenty of people, your ancestors, died for you to be here. And there's, I don't want to say a debt, but it's like you owe. You owe. So sitting back, enjoying life or whatever, and not giving nothing back, that's a violation. That's a violation. So this is something I'm coming into understanding. And like giving back, it's like other things I had to work out. Time, you have to prioritize, juggle. But things are falling right in the part where it's like now giving back to the community is starting to speed up for me. It's like, you know, volunteering once a month now, it's like coming, the opportunity. And as I get knowledge, I want to get into tutoring, more subjects. And you see my video prior to this about math and reading and maybe a little bit of science, helping other people who are struggling, because in our school systems, a lot of kids are struggling in just the basic courses. But, you know, I'm not trying to put too many topics in this, but yeah, reading this book, I'm halfway through, Death in the Congo, Murdering Patrice Lumumba. Very informative. And these authors, like I said, I investigate who they were, who they worked for, but the information they putting down, they laying it down how it happened, his assassination happened, and the reasons why, who was who wanted what they wanted, didn't want, and how they played sides. And it's like a game of chess. A game of chess. And like I said, in 2 days, it will be 51 years since Malcolm X was assassinated. So, yeah, this topic makes people uncomfortable. You know, for those who are really uncomfortable, really don't want to learn anything, they just want to see me on camera and see what I'm speaking about. You know, as people say, you know, you can spend your time reading a book and help elevate yourself, raise yourself up. Raise yourself up and help somebody else. Help somebody else. And when we say help somebody else, a lot of times people think, well, I'm helping people in my family. No, that's good. Everybody normally helps people in their bloodline. Most people do. No, it's helping people that you're not even related to, blood-wise. We all family. To help people who are not related to you by blood. That's the real thing. But I had to pull this out too. We talk about Islam and all that. I had this on my little stuffed animal back there. But it's my little camouflage hat. Yeah, y'all see that? I still had this from my army days. I got out in the early 90s. But yes, I did serve in the Persian Gulf War. I was over there, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. And we did have to wear this stuff when we weren't out and about. But I did say this hat. So yeah. I did my time in the military. And I served my time in a campaign, a war, so-called war campaign. Yeah, so a lot of people, you know, who like to watch what I have to say haven't done this type of time. No, they haven't done that type of time. But, you know, my first introduction to Islam was over there, and just seeing women covered up, and how even as we were soldiers, we had to have sleeves rolled up, we had to roll them down. So all of that was like, why we gotta roll our sleeves down? Why don't women dressed in all black and their faces covered? It's so weird how like 20 years later, it's like, dang, I end up doing the same thing, almost the same thing. That's what you say when you don't understand something, stuff seems so weird and confusing, or why would they want to do that and all that? And then it's amazing how things can change in your life. And you say, man, 20-something years ago, I was sitting there like that was the weirdest thing on earth. Now I done went and converted to that religion. Who would have thought that? But religion, I'm coming to like I want to say a crossroads, but religion, now I'm feeling that you can't stay stuck in a religion. You can't, all truth is not just in one book. It's a boundary. It is a set of rules and regulations, but there's more to us than staying in a book or a religion and claiming you just Muslim, you just Christian, you just a Hebrew or whatever, you just a Buddhist or whatever. That's what they talk about, spirituality. But I'm starting to see religion is confining. Not saying I will drop everything, but it is confining. People say, you still a Muslim? You don't cover your hair? Yeah, I am. And I'm like to say, just because somebody don't cover their hair don't mean they're not a Muslim. Just because somebody covers their hair, that don't mean they are. Don't be fooled by a piece of cloth, please. You know, but people try to restrict you. You see how it is restricting? You're not wearing a scarf, you're not a Muslim. Really? Really? Okay. Yeah, but anyway. Just filling my thoughts. But I'm going to finish this book on Patrice Lumumba. And I see already I'm about to make another 50-minute video. But yeah, I had to get my thoughts on this book and assassination. 51 years since the assassination of Malcolm X. But yeah, time of remembrance. But yeah, information can help you understand, and you won't always take people's sides and words. You got to sit back and think about it and marinate on what you learn and the reasons why things happen. But yeah, but I want to end the video. I gotta make my videos shorter. But I hope somebody learns something. Somebody learning something. Yeah, but I'm gonna leave it at that. So.